It's only took 3 or 4 trips back over. We came up better than it started.
Oh, it is here. Oh, here, really, so I like it.
Glenn helped.
No, I think both staff.
Oh, so.
So Zach, we do have Jasmine on the line, which gives you a quorum. So when you're ready, let me know and I'll set the recording.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Hello, good to see everyone. Tuesday, February 6th, Pickens County Planning and Zoning, regular meeting. And, it looks like we have Jeffrey present, Doug, and then online we have Jasmine, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we have a quorum, and, that is good. Any commissioner comments that are not pertaining to the agenda this evening?
So one, again, congratulations to Rye. Thank you for the input from Glenn and others for the 500-acre GMQS exemption and the 6 months of work, both staff, the public, the OCC and P&Z did. So I think it's a good win for the community, and thank you for advancing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else, Doug?
Thanks.
Perfect. Any comments from planning staff?
No.
Okay. And is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on anything that's outside of the agenda this evening? All right, then I guess we'll begin with Redstone Castle.
Yeah. Is this as big as I can make my screen? Do you think? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we just. I did fit. Also screen more. Yes, I am happy, but only for a little while. So Leslie Moss, last time we were here, we really focused on Glenn giving, a review of the history, of the property, the history of the approvals, and bringing you guys completely up to speed with what their proposal is. I kind of walked you through, not really much, because we had those 15 items that we wanted the applicant to respond to. And so we really focused on those things and talked about those things and moved on. So what I'm going to do for you is just walk through the code sections that you have to consider. And then I'm not going to really talk about the 15 items that they gave us information on, because I integrated that into the memo that you got for this meeting. But I will take the opportunity to just highlight if there's anything that still is unresolved or jumps out. So again, just as a little refresher, the castle property, all is 3 parcels. All 3 parcels are zoned Village Lodge preservation. So this is parcel A, and it's the castle parcel. It's just about 72 acres. And parcel B is the carriage house parcel, and that is 40 acres. And then parcel C is the barn parcel, and that's 42 acres. The parcels A and B have historic conservation easements on them. So we sent the application to the following referral entities and received referral comments from them. I also do want to say that after the packet went out, I got 2 more comments that didn't make it into your packet, but these will be part of the public record. I did get, something more from Carl Oliver. He is with Carbondale, Rural Fire Protection. I asked him to go out and really kind of look at the access roads and pay attention to what staff was recommending as far as turnouts, the widths of the driveways. If you recall, staff was not recommending to enlarge the driveway that, went into the Castle Parcel A because it's in a historic conservation easement. Picking County driveway standards, by the way, are 16 feet. But we did recommend that, the driveways be enlarged in the barn parcel, the access driveway with turnouts and emergency turnarounds, to 12 feet. Because that's where the cabins and the cottages are going to be. So I asked Carl to go out and really, look at this, and he had been in contact with Kobe Christoph as well. And he said, Castle, the drive and the pull-off zones are good and measured 20 feet and tested well with a propane truck that met us coming out. So that's the 0.9 miles into the castle. They have some clearance issues that they've identified with a blue spruce and a cottonwood. Clearance needs to be maintained. Most important, we need to be looking at a second egress out of the site or be sure that a shelter in place front of the castle is maintained. So those are the latest comments I got from Carbondale Rural Fire. And then after reading my memo in the packet, Jeffrey Woodruff provided comments really related to fire safety, really, architecture, building material wise, fuel tanks. And I passed those comments on to the team so they can respond to them when we go forward to BOCC. And then when we get to commissioner comments, maybe you can talk about the land use code text now. It's okay. Okay. So, like I outlined for you last time, this application looks at a variety of different aspects of the code. The land use code for text amendments, the section for text amendments, they're creating a definition of wellness center. They're adding wellness center to table 4-1, which is our use section of the code. Suzanne and I are recommending that it be a use by master plan review under the accessory and temporary use section in our permitted use table. The reason why we're recommending that is that the wellness center is an accessory to the tourist accommodation units. It's not the principal use on the property. And as well, the reason why we're recommending that it is a not a allowed use, but a use that is reviewed under the master plan is if someone else were to create a village lodge preservation zone district on their property, another big piece of property, and we would want to review a master plan and all the uses that go with the master plan. We also also one of the items is we're amending the GMQS section in the code for deed restricted on-site, deed restricted employee housing. And I just talked about wellness center as a permitted use as part of the master plan. Then we're doing a major amendment to the Village Lodge, Redstone Castle Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan. So that was what was adopted in 2018 and 2019 with the previous iteration that kind of refurbished the castle and everything, and a master plan was adopted. Well, the applicant is using that master plan, but they're making amendments to the master plan. So it's an amendment to the master plan, as well as changing the use table in the master plan and the dimensions and the heights table in the master plan. And that was attachment J in your memo. When you make a major amendment to a master plan, then those amendments are subject to special review. So there's a special review section in the memo. And then, we looked at GMQS exemption because of the two multifamily deed restricted employee housing and the 9 dorm rooms in the castle. And then the big section was activity envelope and site plan review. And that was the section that really, was revamped with this new memo based upon, addressing those 15 items that we had, asked the applicant to do last time. So just to, jump a little bit and use my lack of creative skills here. You'll see. So the land use code text amendments, as I mentioned, they're creating a definition for a wellness center. We're adding a wellness center as accessory and temporary use in the Village Lodge Preservation Zone District. We're also creating a GMQS exemption for deed restricted rental employee housing units. We added the phrase located at employment centers in the rural area of the county. So we kind of asked the applicant to redefine the definition of the wellness center. And they provided some edits, and then Suzanne and I took a hard look at it, and we just refined it a little bit more. And I don't think I heard back from the applicant that what we were going for was not supported by them. We were concerned, like I said in the memo, about detox center, and we thought that maintaining health and preventing illness was a little too broad. We want to try and keep this as much as we could to Stefan's vision as he described to all of us. And then we are, as I said, we're amending the section 6-30 exemptions. We're adding deed restricted category affordable housing rental units to 6-3040. We're changing the language in 6-3040. And then we are defining what exactly it is that we're adding to this section. So with regard to the wellness center, staff supports the addition of the wellness center as a permitted use or master plan use in the Village Lodge Zone District. As I said, the wellness center is not a principal use on the property. It is accessory to the tourist accommodation units. And staff also found that it's consistent with the 1993 Redstone Master Plan. The master plan includes goals to enhance the Redstone visitor experience by promoting the improvement of tourist accommodation facilities and activities. The other goal is consider the creation of a flexible new zone district designed for Redstone tourist accommodation facilities. And it also includes consider permitting the limited expansion of tourist accommodation facilities, provided the existing balance of the village is not compromised. Staff also supports amending the code to enable job-related on-site rental employee housing. The proposed units, they mitigate employees that are generated on-site by the wellness center and the tourist accommodation units. And this will be immediate development of affordable housing on-site versus employee housing impact fees that then go into a fund that then, makes its way ultimately in a couple of years to a project. On-site deed restricted housing is consistent with the 1993 Redstone Master Plan. It will reduce traffic on the narrow roadway into and out of the castle property. And multifamily dwelling units and employee dwelling units were listed as permitted units in the master plan in the 2018 master plan. So because, we're adding, the wellness center and the greenhouse to the master plan, we're amending the master plan, and it's a major amendment, to the master plan. So these are the items that have been added to the master plan. And, as well as to there, if you saw in attachment J, there was a chart that listed heights and dimensions and everything said by review of the master plan. But we are defining, the size of each of the cabins and, the cottages, the size of, the multifamily buildings at 15,900 is total. For the two buildings, including, they have a full basement below for storage. 9 dorm bedrooms, the greenhouse at 4,800 square feet, the wellness center within the castle and the carriage house. And then as part of this master plan amendment, the applicant has proposed deleting the items at the bottom of the page, from the master plan. So, and in the master plan, we identified also the height of the accessory structures. So the accessory structures are, were identified as in the 2018 master plan as 20 feet. And the cabins and the cottages are still proposed at 20 feet. The two multifamily buildings are 28 feet, and we are adding that to the master plan. But the buildings are including a full basement for storage. And, you know, by going up a little higher, they're able to reduce the footprint of the two buildings. The two new buildings, are not within, and the cabins and the cottages are not within the historic easements. And, they're, Jeffrey, you were the only one on the site visit, but the applicant did include like some scenic view photos in the application. And all this new development is proposed embedded within the mature forest on the north side of the property. And which really aids in screening new development from Highway 133, which is our scenic view protection corridor. The design of the new buildings, the colors and materials will have to be reviewed by the Redstone HPC. And, the height of the greenhouse will also not exceed 20 feet. And the 4,800 square feet of the greenhouse is kind of nuanced. In our code, we exempt agricultural square footage. And if you're on a property that's 35 acres or more, which all three of these parcels are, you get 1,600 square feet exempt square footage for a greenhouse. So if you, instead of doing 1,600 greenhouses, they've combined the three parcels together for 4,800 square foot greenhouse. As well, because the greenhouse is being reviewed as part of the master plan, doesn't really fall within our exempt agricultural category in the code. But we are requiring those standards in our code for greenhouses. Those are in our conditions of approval, as you may have seen. The multifamily housing, as I mentioned, was already permitted in the master plan. The current proposal the applicant's been working with ACSHA and Aspen Picton County Housing Authority, and they are proposing that these units will be deed restricted to category 3, fully deed restricted rental units at category 3. They still need to work with ACSHA to come up with some kind of category for the dorm units. ACSHA doesn't have a dorm style unit within their housing inventory, so they're continuing to work with that. Staff is recommending that we do an audit every 5 years of the employees generated. I was a little skeptical that their employee generation numbers were really it seemed low to me. but what is really standard operating procedure here in this county and the city is that we require audits. And we look to see if the number of employees are more or less than what the application said and what the applicant is mitigating for. So in the event that we would find that, there were more employees on site, than are being mitigated, then we would work with the applicant to, probably do, employee housing impact fee. Let's see. Rezoning. So, because we are amending the Village Lodge Preservation Zone District, we are also, rezoning and adding the wellness center to the master plan. So the two biggies that you consider when you're looking at rezoning are what are the change conditions affecting the property that support the rezoning, and what is the effect of the rezoning on traffic generation and road safety. And in the 2018 Redstone Master Plan, that master plan approved 21 tourist accommodation units, 13 in the castle, hose house and carriage house, and 8 detached cabins and cottages, for a total of 33 bedrooms. It also approved 35 special events annually for up to 150 people. The current proposal obviously reduces the tourist accommodation units to 20 bedrooms and proposes a maximum of 4 special events a year. There is the 2 multifamily housing on site and the 9 dorm rooms, but as we've already talked, staff supports having that on site employee housing. In our analysis and in talking with neighbors and getting input from the neighbors, and in looking at the traffic impact fee, not impact fee, the traffic impact analysis that was submitted, it found that this is a less intensive use on the property with regard to the amount of traffic that is proposed to be generated. And you don't have the noise of the special events, amplified music for special events, and the tear down and setup that's required for special events. And as I mentioned before, we found the wellness center is consistent with the 1993 Redstone Master Plan and the Crystal River Valley Master Plan. Those plans encourage the sustainability of lodging in Redstone. The plans recommend enhancing the Redstone visitor experience by promoting improvement in tourist accommodation facilities and activities, and consider permitting limited expansion of tourist accommodation facilities provided the existing balance of the village is not compromised. And as I say in the memo and up here, there are minimal visual impacts. The carriage house and the castle have been refurbished. Exterior, nothing is really changes. Interior, because the therapy rooms, well, now the therapy focuses will be in the castle. And the new structures are on barn parcel C, which, as I said, is really embedded in the vegetation. So we had other sections of the code that and I had to quit using this because it wasn't working for me. So the other sections of the code that we needed to consider, that we considered in the application, are GMQS exemption for deed restricted dwelling units. I'm going to go back up to the map, which is pretty. GMQS exemption for deed restricted dwelling units. And this is, and as part of that, we have this section of code called calculation of impact fee, commercial employee generation. And that was where Glenn did the analysis and they came up with that there will be 45 employees generated by the total use on the property. That's the servicing the accommodation units, the staff who are, administering the therapies to clients, the chefs, 45 employees on site. And, so the on-site employee housing is consistent with the 1993 Redstone Master Plan. The existing provisions of the Pickens County Land Use Code should be utilized to ensure that new subdivision provides affordable housing to mitigate demands for affordable housing in the community. Specifically, new residential subdivisions and tourist accommodations facilities should provide on-site deed restricted housing. As I mentioned, we are recommending after one full year of operation of the wellness center that we want to have an audit of the employees housed on site to make sure that that 45 FTE number is accurate. And the big section of this application and the big section of review was activity envelope and site plan review. And this is the section that took the brunt of our additional information that we needed. Primarily, we were concerned about the location of the upper two cabins. And we asked the applicant to restudy whether those cabins were really safe on that. All the development of the cabins and the cottages is on a alluvial fan, a mapped alluvial fan. Our code does not prohibit development on alluvial fan. We just require applicants to engineer the heck out of any development that they're gonna do on that site. In addition, as Glenn really clearly pointed out, there's two large debris flow gullies that come down through parcel C. And the applicant is proposing to do a GeoBird debris flow mitigation fence. And we asked them to study the location of that a little bit more and get a little bit specific with us. And as well as in this forest, there are some significant specimen ponderosas and spruce trees on this property. And we asked for a survey of those trees and then to show those trees on top of the new development that would happen on the barn parcel to determine how many trees that we would, that potentially could be lost. So the applicant did all of that, plus they addressed our concerns about the channel. So the debris flow comes into what is going to be a head wall above the cabins, and then that channel is going to be hardened. And that debris flow, the clear water of the debris that we caught in the fence will flow through the channel. And so we asked for a little bit more material on that. After the applicant provided all of that material to us, our planning engineer, Josh Rice, took a hard look at it. He and Colby had a bunch of conversations about it. And we feel that with the greater level of detail that we got, and particularly with the channel hardening and then the clear water flow into the meadows, we got more information on that. That we're confident that those cabins can stay where they have been originally proposed. It looks like 4 specimen trees will be lost and possibly an additional 2 specimen trees will be lost out of approximately 35, right? I had to count them. So, of 35 trees. So, and then also DHM gave us a lot more detail on techniques that they'll employ and use to protect the trees that are going to be maintained while, you know, they're digging in utilities and roads and access and things like that. So we were comfortable with that level of detail that they provided to us. There are some things still that, you know, so like, there's a condition of approval that we request an arborist, we want an arborist plan at the time of building permit submittal to go with the revegetation plan. We are also requesting a lot of stuff to be attached to the activity envelope and site plan itself that gets recorded. So, you know, we have a full document of detail of what was represented and what our expectations are. So I need to just double check that I don't have any other. And then finally, there's a couple things that kind of emerge from our referral entities. At the very end of everything, there's quite a few documents that we required from the applicant. We're requiring a conservation easement. And Paul Holsinger is probably on the line, and he could talk about this a little bit more, but I'll tee this up for you. You saw a map in your memo that was created by Paul. So Open Space and Trails is requesting that the 88 acres that the applicant proposed to be conserved, that was up in here, all up in here above the 7,400 elevation line. Paul, Open Space and Trails is just asking that the boundary of that 88 acres be expanded so the conservation easement matches up with the historic easements. On parcel A and B. We also, with regard to the debris flow mitigation fence, the location of that, we asked the applicant to study that. And we wanted to make sure that the bull wheel of the historic T-bar is protected. And so they dug a little deeper and have provided us with a better specific location of that fence. But we're concerned about winter access to the ice pillar. And it's popular with ice climbers. How many ice climbers there are, I don't know. We have a condition of approval in there that we want winter access only through the fence. So people could go up the gully because that's typically the way they go. Glenn has asked that we need to understand that a little bit better, and that we need to go out and do a site visit and figure out just what that means. And if you had a fence there, is there really no other way to go around the fence? The applicant has represented that the people who recommended this fence said, you're going to have a section in the fence that you can open up, because you're going to have to go in and clear out the debris when you have an event. So I'm hoping that we can kind of tie those two together. If you have to have a section that has to be made so it can be opened, maybe there's some kind of pedestrian gate through there or something that we can do. But we're open to a site visit, and we would do a site visit before we go to the BOCC. The Open Space and Trails is also asking for a permanent winter only easement up the dirt road on the barn parcel to the ice pillar. And I know the applicant wants to talk about that. We're also asking for a recreational trail easement from the north to the south in front of the castle properties, kind of not, when I say paralleling the Crystal River, it's not down in the Crystal River, but it would parallel the Crystal River, probably using Lover's Lane. That's also, that would be a third easement that we would require to be recorded. And then we're also looking for, as part of the deed restricted housing on site, we will need a occupancy covenant. That would be between the applicant and Pickens County. And that covenant, I think the language of the covenant is going to be really important, because we want to ensure that these 16 units are deed restricted rental units in perpetuity, no matter who owns the property. and no matter what, the future use may be of the property. So, that's an occupancy covenant that those things are required to be recorded, before any building permits can be submitted, like within 180 days of the OCC approval. I do have, one correction besides what Glenn's gonna bring up. What number is that? The no structures above the hammerhead?
Yeah.
21? 21? So condition number, oh. Yes, condition number 21. No structures other than drainage improvement shall be located by the hammerhead. That was a, old, planning and engineering recommendation when we were wanting them to consider relocating the upper cabin. There are two upper cabins and pathways that are located above the hammerhead. So that just needs to be struck. Number 21. 21.
Page 9.
Page 3.
13.
Did I print the wrong? Was that copy?
Strike 21.
Yes. Is Paul on?
Yes.
Do you guys want to hear from Paul as part of staff presentation, and then we can turn it over to the applicant?
Yes.
I'm done. Unless you guys have any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Leslie before we pass it over to Paul or Glenn?
The only one would be the text amendment. For you directly, which is
Yes,
in my note to you.
yes, yes.
It's your own letter specific.
Mhm.
So the question for staff is, are you fine with a new defined term, which is wellness center, that has an undefined term, which is detox center? And so in the code, you also need to define what you're not. So, and you can say Jeffrey, strike it and move on. I'm cool with that too.
So
So
you're saying drug and alcohol treatment facility is not defined in our code?
it's not a defined term in chapter 11. And so
Right.
you're putting in an undefined term by
Okay.
saying something's not something. If that sounds pedantic, you guys can all keep me to the table. It's minor, but you're just creating your own conundrum in the code.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I
I
can,
have to think about that.
okay, and I can let it go for this evening
Okay,
and for this
would you-
resolution.
And we can
Absolutely.
think about it.
No, we
Yeah.
can move on.
Okay, and you're fine with detox as in restore health and balance of body?
I'm totally cool with detox. And
Okay.
my only question was undefined.
I thought we took out detox.
What did you have on the screen?
Yeah, it's
not.
that's taken out.
I was fine with detox the whole time.
I guess I have a question. Why is the wellness used for temporary use? That so that going forward it can be something else, or does it mean he has to come back and get approval for the temporary use? It's listed as a temporary use.
Well, it's the way our land use code,
I think it's under accessory
And
and temporary uses, so there's a use category for accessory and temporary uses, and I think in this circumstance, it would fit under accessory uses as opposed to temporary uses. Temporary uses are like, as the name suggests, like a
Temporary is that?
temporary event or something like that.
Right, that's why I'm
I think the
wondering. why it's-
clarification is that would be that it's an accessory use.
right, right. I'll make sure moving forward that if, particularly in the reso, if there's any, or definition. Yeah, because it's just the way the permitted use table, it's that category, accessory and temporary. Yeah, thank you.
So from your final definition, the detox programs is still in there. And then it says a wellness center is not a drug and alcohol addiction treatment facility, which in essence would be page 21 in your
Mhm.
resolution. And I'm cool with the way it is and I can move on.
Okay.
Jasmine has a question.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
Is it anticipated either in the definition or for this owner that the wellness center will be open for day use by non-tourists? I mean, people who are not staying in the cabins?
No, it is not the intent. The intent is you go there for a retreat and the service are only offered to the people booking lodging and staying on property.
Okay, thank you.
Should we hear from Paul?
Yes, let's.
Thank you
Paul,
all.
go ahead.
Thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Manager for Pickens County Open Space and Trails. And I did have a chance to talk with Glenn right before the meeting started. So some of the stuff we've talked over, I'll insert what we spoke about, but I'm going to share my screen just to share the map that we supplied to Leslie. Is that all coming through? I can make it bigger. Sorry, I'm gonna have to move some things. Okay. So we have three main asks. I mean, I think our main ask was to secure ice climbing access to the pillar, which is actually on the Forest Service property. These green pieces, long linear pieces, are part of Sawmill Hill open space. This yellow hatch is a conservation easement that's owned by Bob McCormick. So we protected all this land in between the castle and the pillar. We also have access through the Sawmill Hill conservation easement, but we don't have a formalized access on the castle property, and it's a priority for open space and trails to get that done. This wouldn't be year-round access. It would just be over snow, or at least when the ice is in, and we can craft an easement to speak to that. I also offered in our comments to steward that easement, enforce it, put up the seasonal signage as necessary so that it wouldn't be a burden on the landowner. Are there any questions about that piece of our comment? Okay, moving on. The conservation easement, which we were really grateful that the landowner has been thoughtful about providing to us, it described a conservation easement above 7,400 foot elevation line, and that's this line here on parcel. I think this is parcel 3, or I might have it backwards. But this is the line. When we looked at, there's a gap between where it kind of runs where my hand is going. We didn't see any need to not join these conservation pieces. There are some plans for some roads and trails, I think, on this end, but we can build that into a conservation easement and secure this perpetually for the conservation values in the area. So we could have a continuous corridor for wildlife reaching the river all the way up into the upper sections in the Forest Service here. I wasn't able to get this discussed with Glenn. I think we just crossed wires on this, but this is what open space was talking about. We do see some issues also with a little sliver of unencumbered land if there is something to remain there, which is also why we just felt it would be cleaner to conserve the entire piece from one conserved parcel to the next, and just create a really meaningful block of conservation, as you can see here. The other piece that we asked for, which I understand is not something that the landowner wants to pursue is there's a easement, or not an easement, but a delineation for Lover's Lane, which I think kind of travels this way. Open Space requested a public access on that, really because we as a staff want to make sure that all of the resources and effort that went into protecting this beautiful structure through the state, through Pickens County, is visually accessible to the public. And a good way to do that would be to have a public access trail coming down along Lover's Lane. I talked to Glenn about that. I know that the landowner doesn't want to pursue that. If there is some other way to make that happen, to make any sort of additional visual access for that resource, we would be open to it. And to go back up to this ice climbing, it just reminded me, I did speak with Glenn about that too. He said it's a bit of a problem to have an access through a debris flow net. So we did discuss a site visit to come up with maybe a trail that would go around it to get access, or some other way to make this a usable route for those ice climbers during the winter. Any questions from P&Z or the applicant would be fine.
Questions for Paul? Great. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, of course.
Then I guess we're gonna hand it over to Glenn right now.
Okay, thank you. I can begin by introducing members of our team that are here, because they've done most of the work on this. I just kind of collated it, put it all together, but Stefan Debate is the owner and will be running the facility. You've met Stefan before. Kobe Christoph is here. Kobe's a civil engineer at Sopris Engineering. And Kobe has been working on all of the grading and drainage and the debris flow mitigation plan, as well as the access plan, and working with the Redstone Water and Sanitation District and the fire department. So I thought it'd be good to have Kobe here so he can report directly to you on his conversations with the Redstone Water and Sand, and also on the approach that's been taken to the debris flow mitigation and the drainage and grading. Also here is Jason James, who's a landscape architect at DHM. And Jason has been teaming with Sopris Engineering to come up with these grading studies, to identify the specimen trees, and to come up with the plan to protect those trees, as well as to revegetate an area that really could use some revegetation. The area north of the barn is, Jeff's been on the site, but it's an awful lot like a neglected area where there's lots of junk and not much native vegetation other than these beautiful trees, which we're fortunate to have, and also protect all of the proposed cabins and cottages from visibility from the road. So Jason's here to speak to that. Mark Hamilton is on the screen. Mark is a land use attorney with Holland and Hart. And he's very familiar with the Castle property from the work we did in developing the Redstone Castle Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan Code Amendment, and gaining approval from Pickens County for the existing master plan for the property. So Mark has a really good background on what's going on. So anyway, that's the full group, and we can respond to questions. I have many slides if you want to see anything. All of the for the most part, all the slides that were in your, the images that were in your packet, I have here in case you have a specific question about, something that was in the packet. I thought the best way to start, in general, let me just say, Leslie's really done a good job of covering everything. She's gotten into all of the issues, and, you know, we're generally happy with the recommendations in the memo and the draft, resolution, recommending approval of the Village Lodge Preservation, Master Plan Amendment. We have some issues and concerns. Oh, Jonathan Losky's here too. I was wondering where he was. I see him now. Jonathan, did the wildlife and wildfire analysis. And I asked Jonathan to be here, particularly because he could respond to any questions you have, Jeff, about, the wildfire mitigation. But Jonathan can also comment about, the wildlife, and just touching upon what Paul shared with you about the conservation easement. I haven't discussed at all with Stefan the idea of extending the conservation easement below the 7,400 foot elevation line so that it matches up with the historic conservation easement on the castle. So that's something new that we would have to discuss. I just want to point out that the basis for the western boundary, which would be the downhill boundary of that conservation easement, is that it was a recommendation from Parks and Wildlife that the land above 7,400 be placed in a conservation easement. That's where it came from. It's in the Redstone master plan. There's a recommendation that that land be conserved for wildlife purposes. And I would say, and I haven't even discussed this with Stefan, I'd be concerned about placing the land that is south of the castle, below the 7,400 in a conservation easement, because it's the only land left on the property other than the land on the barn parcel to the north of the barn that is not encumbered by a conservation easement that could potentially be developed. And I just think, and Stefan can comment on this himself, is that it would be good to have some land left on the property that isn't encumbered by a conservation easement, and it has not been identified as critical habitat by Parks and Wildlife, and that was the basis for the proposed conservation easement. And we can look at that on a map if you'd like. So that was new information that just came up, so we really haven't had a chance to discuss it. But we can discuss that. I want to share my screen. I'm going to try to do this. Let's see. Share screen. Do you have to do anything, Bonnie? or
No,
just-
you should be able to.
Yeah, you're good.
There we go.
All right, that worked. And I think what I'd like to do is use these items here to kind of lead a discussion. And we can take questions as you go, or I can run all through this and then we can discuss it however you want to handle it. It doesn't matter to me, Zach, whatever you want to do. Access to the ice pillar. Paul's touched upon this, Leslie's touched upon it. I think we need to go out there in the snow with the conditions like they are and walk above the T-bar and see what options there are for getting into this gully to go up to the ice pillar. I was kind of surprised to hear this. If the guys that climb these ice pillar, they walk up this deep gully that, I mean, it's really hard to walk up that gully, even in the summertime. There are boulders and down brush. We walked up that gully trying to get to where the water tank was. So I gotta hand it to the ice climbers if they're walking up that gully in the wintertime, but we need to figure out how they go. And figure out a way to go around this debris flow fence, because I talked to the geologist who's recommending the installation of this flexible wire fence. It's a GeoBrug fence. And there is gonna be a removable section that hopefully we don't ever have to use, but you'll remove that section so you can, pull the debris out, you know. I hope for Stefan's sake, it's every 10 or 20 years, but it's not, or longer. But, it's not something that would be, easy to do. Here, I'll show you. You've seen this in your packet, but, this would be on 25 here. This is what these fences look like. So there's one shot of a fence. Here's another shot. And I don't think there's one, I have a third picture. No. Though, this is what the fences look like. And I don't think it's an easy thing to remove a section, you know, to do it like every fall when the snow's about to come. I spoke with Roger Peel, the geologist at WSP, who did our geologic report, and he said it would probably cost between $10,000 and $20,000 to remove a section of that fence. And that's not an annual expense that we would want to incur. So anyway, the upshot of all this is we need to look at ways to get around that fence, and we're gonna go out there as a Kobe, Paul and I, and take a look at this, and maybe we'll take one of the guys that or women that climb or the ice pillars and see if we can figure out a way around the fence. So we'll do that before we go to the Board of County Commissioners.
Glenn, I just wanna, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Really quick, just to get a sort of a baseline. So with the access to the ice pillars, you have no issue with the actual access and having people go up and use the ice pillar. We're just talking about how we can navigate through the geofence and maintain the structural integrity of that fence without having to create some situation where you guys are having to take it down and put it up or cut holes through it or do something that is.
There is another issue, in that Stefan said he's amenable to having people go and climb the ice pillars and having an easement for it. But we would like it to operate similar to the way a fishing easement was done on the Dart property years ago. When you wanted to fish the Dart property, the easement required that the fisherman who was going to fish that property, it was a long stretch of river on the Roaring Fork, would they called the fly shop in Basalt and said, we're going to be on the property, and they monitored who was on the property. So there's always going to be someone available at the castle, at the reception desk. So we would just ask that if an ice climber is going to be on the property and climbing the pillar, that they report in that day and say they're planning to climb.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we don't have an issue, and I'm certain that if somebody is gonna attack a 90 feet ice rock, they should be able to go around a fence.
They're too much.
But those fences cost so much money. I'm just afraid that it's not like a door that has a lock. So we'll find a way, but we don't have in principle a problem with accessing the pit.
And Glenn, I think another good example is the access at Chaparral Ranch that they have. For the Forest Service.
Yeah.
It goes above there. They created sort of the system at the gate
Yeah.
where you stop at the gate and there's, no vehicle access. So you have to like walk up, and then I believe you call the range manager and say, hey, I'm here. Oh, I want to do this. And then you get access through the property up to the trail above, and that system, I think, they've been using that for a while, and it doesn't seem to have any problems, so.
Yeah, we can do something like that. It's funny, Kobe sent me, from what guide it was, it was some mountain project. Yeah, mountain project for how to access the ice pillar. And so I clicked on it and looked, and it says, go around the no trespassing sign at the release. walk up the road. And so anyway, that's the current access point now. So it'll be different than that. But we're just asking for a call in, so that people know who are on the property. So, and that leads us to the recreational trail, which Paul discussed. And unfortunately, the recreational trail on the east side of the river is not something that can work with the proposed use of the castle. And it just isn't possible to have people walking through on a trail on the east side of the river, and there would just be no control. It won't be consistent with the operation of the resort as Stefan sees it. Now, I discussed this with Leslie, and what Leslie was saying is we want to ensure that there's some public access to the castle over and above the tours that are taking place all the time, because there are regular tours that are available to people, so that the residents of Redstone and the Crystal River Valley feel that, you know, they're not shut out from enjoying the castle all the time. So Stefan is open to the idea of having local events, maybe a couple events a year, for perhaps the Crystal River Caucus comes there for a caucus meeting in the castle once a year, and maybe in the summertime, in the courtyard, there's a barbecue or a party for people of Redstone and the Crystal River Valley to go and enjoy the castle. So this would maintain some public access for Crystal River Valley and Redstone residents over and above the tours, which will go on all the time. Right now, there are tours 24 tours per year, which will continue. So I just wanted to mention that, and forgive me for misspelling there. I did this really quickly before I came over the meeting. So caucus meeting or summer gathering for Crystal River Valley locals. We've discussed the specimen trees. I don't think we need to talk about that anymore. They've all been mapped, they've been measured, and we're agreeable to Leslie's plan to include details with the activity envelope site plan about how those trees will be protected during construction. The road maintenance plan and agreement, it's Stefan's plan to take care of that road. He's not looking for having an agreement with the other homeowners on the road for maintenance of the road. If there is an agreement in the future to share some costs, of course, Stefan would be amenable to it, but it's his plan that he's going to maintain and take care of the road. And he'd be happy to have contributions from the other property owners towards that effort. But he recognizes that he's going to be taking care of that road. The wellness center. We were a little concerned that the wellness center was being categorized as a special review use. I discussed this with Rye. Mark Hamilton and I both discussed it with Rye prior to the meeting. And we have an understanding that the wellness center will be an allowed use, but it will be accessory to the tourist accommodations facility. So it's not operating as an independent wellness center. It is accessory to the tourist accommodations, and the uses in the Redstone Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan go through special review. But the product of that process is a listing of uses in the master plan that says what uses are allowed and what uses are subject to further review. So the product of this process is going to be a listing of the uses on the site which are allowed, and the wellness center will be one of those uses. Now, as far as having an annual review for a few years of how the wellness center is functioning, We understand the desire for that. That can be done. Mark Hamilton has prepared some language that would guide the annual review, which I can share with you. It is,
This language would be amending number 19 in the resolution.
yeah, and so this language Mark drafted, and we can work on it further, but I think what it does is it establishes parameters for the end. If you want to step in here and discuss what you had in mind with this language, I think that would be great.
Thanks, Glenn. Hopefully it's relatively self-explanatory. We just took the paragraph 19 that was in Leslie's draft resolution and tried to clarify it a little in terms of having the annual review component relate to the code provisions regarding special review uses. That's where the Pickens County Land Use Code provides for annual reviews. And that each annual review would be done for purposes of evaluating ongoing compliance with all terms and conditions of this approval, as well as any otherwise applicable permit and code conditions. And then Leslie's draft already did this to a degree, but I took it a little further in terms of, after discussing it with her last night, that the BOCC, if it chose to in the future, if it turns out that once a year is too much and things are fairly stable, then it could kind of ratchet down over time. The BOCC could either decide to do the reviews, let's say every 3 years or 5 years or whatever it decides, or it could delegate this to administrative review by ComDev. And so that's really what the changes are. And you'll see twice in there that I've added specific reference to section 2-40-20 of the code, which is where the special review use annual evaluation provisions are in the code.
I'd like to add on to that. If you look at number 20 in the reso, I tried to capture those items that we're specifically concerned about that we would look at during an annual review.
And on that front, Leslie, if you don't mind, I left that piece, so I did not propose any edits to that because I thought these two provisions would work together that way.
Yeah, right. So if the P and Z thought that I was missing something, you want to add something in there.
So
Is staff comfortable with Mark's red lines of 19?
Yeah, I think it's consistent with the code and it works well with paragraph 20, condition of approval there, so I don't have a problem with that. And Glenn mentioned just tweaking the language, revising the special review. I've already redlined the resolution a little bit to that effect, and he and Mark, or Glenn and Mark and I did discuss making sure that as it comes back to the P&Z chair for signature, that we've all reviewed the language regarding the special use criteria as it applies to the master plan uses to make sure that's all consistent throughout the resolution. And if the Planning and Zoning Commission is fine with providing direction to staff to make sure that that consistency runs throughout the resolution and the chair is empowered with the ability to sign the reso after checking on that, that would be great. There's actually, if staff were to make a recommendation, or I'm sorry, a P&Z member were to make a motion, I would slightly tweak the language of the resolution in advance of that, just to reflect what we're just talking about right now. So once you're finished with review, I just jump in real quick to do that.
So that's item 5. Number 6, and Leslie, I didn't discuss this with you. This is one of the things I would have liked to talk about, and I apologize. But we would like to have some provisions for night lighting for safety purposes along trails that link the cabins and cottages. to the castle, because we're hoping that people will walk on the trails. And I understand that the county doesn't want to have, lights that are visible from Highway 133 or off the property. But I have worked on trails in the past where there is some downcast shielded safety lighting that it's very close to the ground. So that it's possible for people to walk along the trail and for safety purposes, not trip. And we wouldn't light all the trails on the property, but we would like to have a trail where it's a safe walk for guests to go from the castle back to the cabins and cottages in the evening. I would ask that there be some provision made for downcast trail lighting that would be fully shielded and close to the ground. Number 7 has to do with the tours. And we just want to point out the tours have been ongoing. And in the existing master plan, it says that the tours will accommodate up to 50 people. And Stefan's been running the tour since he acquired the castle. And we have to let you know, and the Board of County Commissioners, so there's no way that the castle can accommodate 50 people on a tour. A number that is, reasonable would be have around 10 people on a tour. In fact, that's really been the highest number of people that have attended a tour. And a lot of it has to do with just walking around the castle with that many people isn't really practical. And for example, we toured the castle with 4 county commissioners and we couldn't keep them herded together. There were commissioners all over the place. And so I think that 10 is the practical number for the number of people on the tours. And we would like to note that in the amended master plan that that's the number of people, that's the maximum capacity for a tour. And in practical application, that's what Stefan's experience is, that 10 is really about the most that you would want to have on a tour. So with that, the next item is the Redstone Water and Sanitation District. And we'd like to report that there is an agreement in kind between the applicant and the Redstone Water and Sanitation District to address capacity challenges with the plant. It's primarily, and Kobe can report on this in more detail, but it's primarily to address the groundwater infiltration into the sewerage system, which is affecting the capacity of the plant. And the plan is to resolve that problem about the groundwater infiltration. And then as a backup plan, there would be an expansion of the plant if needed. And Kobe can take any questions about that agreement that we're in the process of working out with the Redstone Water and Sanitation District. I think those are the major issues that I've identified. I would ask Stefan or other members of our team if there's anything I missed that you might want to address.
No, I think it's a good summary. I appreciate the work of all the staff and the commissioner. I think that the proposed resolution is fair. As you can see, the very few points that we raise are completely easy to compromise because they're just common sense. And I'm very glad that we were able to come together. So thank you for everyone involved.
No, it feels like the applicant's, done an admirable job of addressing lots of constraints. There's lots of constraints to the property. A couple of these issues that they've brought up, the north to south trail, it seems like maybe it's a trail to nowhere from nowhere because there's not one already. So I personally have no problem with them saying if that's not something they're interested in providing. The lighting on the trails for safety, there was the article this week about dark sky compliant. I think that there's probably a way to use dark sky compliant lighting. I think that if you don't have lighting, people walk around with flashlights, it's probably worse. I don't have a lot, I feel like the applicant, as I said, has done a good job. So. that was kind of my comment.
Jasmine, do you have any questions for the applicant? Jeffrey?
Can I go for a couple questions with Jonathan?
Are you awake, Jonathan?
I'm here.
Okay.
So Jonathan, I'm gonna go specifically, thank you for your, well, let me back up. Thank you to Glenn and your team for all the updates, because where we are today relative to 12.5, it's night and day. So thank you for asking and answering all of staff's questions and concerns that we had when we met in December. And the original site visit was Halloween, so we've been at this for a little bit. So Jonathan, the sort of the starting point is, are the residences, I'm hearing low and moderate, but the issue I have with low and moderate is Pitkin County maps were last updated in 1995. And so using Pitkin County maps for anything gives me like loss of sleep. So the definitions that you've used specifically for where we're putting the employee units as well as the lodging, I'm assuming is all under moderate if you just use your mapping or Colorado State Forest Service and ignore completely Pitkin County.
Yeah, let me see if I could share my screen for a second. Oh, I guess I can't, unless Glenn stops his.
There you go.
1 second. So, if you, let's see. Okay, so can you guys see that map? Yeah, so what I typically do is I use the Pitkin County mapping with the understanding that it, was created by the Colorado State Forest Service back in 1995. And so there are errors in mapping, and I use it as a base and then make adjustments to it based on the existing site conditions. So as I wrote in my update that Glenn included in this application, the State Forest Service and Pitkin County's mapping did not include any moderate areas. And they had some areas that were low and some areas that were mapped as high that should be moderate or medium under the land use code. And that's specifically the area that you see in orange, which for the most part coincides with the proposed development. And the reason that is medium rather than severe or low is because it is forested, but it is primarily forested with quaking aspen. And for those of you who don't know, quaking aspen has a sort of a very low capacity to carry fire. In fact, it's often used as a fire break because it has such high moisture content in it. Observations that I've done in my 32 years involved with fire, and as well as peer-reviewed research has shown that wildfires and even prescribed burns that will continue through something like oak and serviceberry or conifers and then hit a stand of aspen, and the fire essentially drops from the canopy to the ground and is a lot easier to fight and will slow down tremendously. Also, the temperatures will drop tremendously, so its ability to spread drops. So that's why that area in orange is I identified as medium wildfire hazard. The area below or west of the castle itself, all those lawns and meadows are clearly low. The riparian area, given its high moisture content, fuels, and the high water table, make that low as well. And then the meadows to the north, where the T-bar is located, those are also have high water table, dominated by grass and forb, land ground cover, and the trees that do occur there are primarily, again, aspen with some conifers, but they're fairly sparse. And again, those of you who've been on the property, the area that's in orange does have some ponderosa pines and other conifers, but again, they're not the dominant tree. So that's why this area is medium and not low. And then when you get to the toe of the slope of those sort of northwesterly or west northwesterly facing slopes, that's when you get into the dense conifer, and then up above it there's montane shrublands, and those are indeed severe wildfire areas. So is that a long-winded way to answer your question, Jeffrey?
That's really helpful. Because the current Colorado State Forest Service maps show high or severe fire intensity scale.
Yes.
And my concern is the resolution as drafted says we're mapping to low, and then all the criteria follow from that. And so I'm worried about structure risk and human life and all those other good things architects should worry about. And the resolution as drafted seems really conservative.
Well, one of my problems with the current Colorado State Forest Service modeled mapping is that it is modeled, and the resolution is not really appropriate to land use, because the pixel size is so large that there's just tremendous amount of error in it. And that's why I like to go in there and just, map more accurate polygons based on the fuel type, as well as hydrology and things like that. Now, regarding are you referencing the defensible space mitigation measures and existing conditions?
Yeah, so I'm moving to the resolution in terms of your work. And so page 15, the applicant should comply with the following.
Jonathan, it's our standard language for map low out of the code.
Okay.
Well, where I'm coming from, Jonathan, we're putting a lot of density in a new space. Again, housing as well, employee as well as vacation, if you will. And it seems, having toured the site, striking that we would say this is a low wildfire development area, given, again, your dialogue and discourse as well. So to me, I'd be more comfortable if this was mapped medium and the resolution would then follow. I would feel more comfortable, with that. And that also comes from the comments we've seen from Carbondale Rural Fire, concerns about ingress and egress. And so I'm just worried that, and if the architect and landscape architect, they would concur. They'd say, yeah, we're comfortable with tighter restrictions on the development. Or again, and your memo says, using Colorado State Forest Service requirements, which again, go further than what is currently in the land use code. So for example, the land use code still has 1/4-inch vents when the rest of the world is, moved to 1/8-inch vents for soffit and eave venting. And Colorado State Forest Service, we haven't looked at the architecture, but the architecture has exposed decks, no heavy timber, and it looks like, nothing covering underneath. So I'm willing to accept your recommendation that we would use Colorado State Forest Service for home ignition zone and all the defensible space, rather than Pitkin County, which seems, again, circa 1995 and, not protecting either the client, or, what we want to see drafted.
Well, and in my letter, I described that area as a medium wildfire hazard under the land use code and recommended for that area, I believe, and I'm just looking through my letter, to be to use the code provisions and mitigation measures for a medium wildfire hazard area, not low. And I
It's
believe that if it's medium, that should be sufficient.
Medium still doesn't cover the vents properly and doesn't cover under deck properly, which Colorado State Forest does properly. The land use code, again, is still lax. In your memo, CSFS is more stringent than Pickens County. And I would be comfortable using CSFS for defensible space as well as home ignition zone and the built environment criteria.
Yeah, I can't really argue the fact, given its adjacency to the severe hazard areas regarding things like soffit vents and stuff like that. I think it would be worthwhile to follow those provisions, but I think it needs to be a mix because especially if they follow the defensible space recommendations that I provide in here, there's going to be very little threat to those structures. However, again, if a fire started up on those slopes, then you're talking about a pretty serious ember rain that's going to come down on there. So anything that's going to protect the roof, the soffits, anything up high and chimneys, anything that can draw in those embers, I would be in favor of.
So what I'm hearing is, number 39,
Yes.
I'll add in. So we're just gonna do medium wildfire, not low and medium, just medium, which pulls in all the low stuff anyway. So I'll change that section of the reso, so it will reflect the standards for medium wildfire, mapped wildfire. But then you guys are talking a different language for soffits and venting, so I need someone to get that.
So soffits and venting is covered under B6 and.
But is that correct?
Soffits and venting should be 1/8 inch as per Colorado State Forest Service. In our land use code, it's at 1/4. And then there's a question, I don't know if Roland Broughton's on here, but there's a question really about the deck and the area, and maybe it's a question for Jonathan. Currently, he's showing decks with no protection for members. So I would add screening decks with 1/8 inch mesh metal or metal mesh, which again is the same as Colorado State Forest Service. And you can push back on that, but right now there's no protection for it. So, and that's it in terms of my fire rabbit hole.
Okay, so you and I are gonna work on that language.
Yeah, and it's in Jonathan's note.
Okay,
That says use best practices, reduce structural ignitability.
okay,
It's in his memo, so I'm not adding something in terms of constraints architecturally or otherwise.
okay, but I just need the language.
We'll get the
For
language.
me, we'll get the language. Okay,
And Jonathan,
That's a big.
the last one is just the fuel tanks that are currently,
Following. Standard code, right.
I'm literally sticking to code.
Yeah, that is
Sorry, I'm
good.
dotting i's with you.
No, that's fine. But it's a building permit submission, right? We need to make sure that at the time of the building permit, we follow the code based on a medium rated fire risk.
Which again is in your health, safety and best interest. So it's
Not a
not,
problem.
I didn't add anything to cost.
Cool.
It was all about, if we approve this, low shouldn't be there.
right,
Okay.
And here are the conditions. And so
Okay.
this is dotting i's and we're about to go. So, there's currently fuel tanks, above ground fuel tanks. Are those, and they're in the, plan that was handed to us on site. And they're actually next to the wellness center, which seems like a strange place for them. They're next to the hydrotherapy center.
No,
And they're in the packet above ground.
The existing ones?
Now, the only existing one is in the open barn
where it was basically to refuel the shuttle, but all the propane tanks are underground.
So that we've covered with NFPA, blah, 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 in terms of propane tanks. What I was concerned with is there's something in the reso that says move the existing fuel tanks one contour south, or sorry, west of the existing road. And so we're concerned about ingress and egress. Seems like a strange place to put fuel tanks. It's on the DHM site plan.
Yeah, the existing fuel tank, it's an existing fuel tank. I know one of the challenges that we'll have to talk through as a group is, once that moves, there's a whole series of other, they have to put it underground.
It's-
and there's
yeah.
monitoring of underground fuel tanks.
It doesn't meet code today. There's no concrete underneath it. If it
Exactly.
fills, it's in the ground. So
Yeah. So we need to have a conversation about.
Which one is that?
It is the one that's up on the struts, it's up on the stand, and it's just off the corner, be the southwest corner.
And that's a propane tank?
No, that one is, is gas tanks.
It's gas.
yeah, yeah. But this is a fuel tank. Fuel tanks are separate from propane tanks.
Yeah.
Fuel tanks are generally gravity.
I don't even know if I need it.
So I'm just making sure that in the reso, we cover both fuel tanks and
Just have to
And-
go grab
and
it.
propane tanks, and it's not, again, it's a fire conversation around ingress and egress.
Yeah.
And the last, I think my last is, in Glen, I would assume today we're gonna drop the 16-foot road width, but there's still a conversation about bridges to be had with, Chief Oliver in terms of, access, ingress and egress. So in other words, in the packet, we're still saying 16 feet in your presentation, but it seems like the 2018 resolution accepted a 12-foot road width. And all these conversations were, let's accept a 12-foot road width.
Mhm.
And I think Fire Chief Oliver, the only question he had was around bridges. And that was as of this afternoon.
Mhm.
So it's really just dotting the i's. When it goes to BOCC, please remove the 16-foot width so we don't read road width. So
That's fine, because there are no bridges, so.
it came up in Chief Oliver's,
And his, first,
in his note this afternoon.
So would that just be,
I think he's talking about a potential third exit on
right,
his site.
yeah,
he's talking about a future bridge, not the bridge that crosses the Crystal and Redstone. Boulevard.
Let's not talk about that bridge.
Yeah, we're not doing it tonight.
but Jeffrey, we don't say 16-foot in the reso.
Glenn still has it in the packet, and I'm saying when it
Yes.
goes, when the same packet goes to BOCC, strike the 12 feet
Right,
and
okay,
move on, because the 2018 BOCC resolution that we've already done has a 12-foot wide lane, and then tonight's has 12 feet, so it's really just limited to what I'm saying, 16 is great.
okay.
Would you entertain a resolution?
I would,
Great, I have some questions for that.
oh yeah,
Sorry.
I have a couple things. Is it Kobe?
Colby.
Kobe, sorry. Can you just give me, I'm looking at the email about Redstone Water and Sanitation from Ryan Kenny. Can you give me the sort of like quick and easy explanation of like what the current capacity they were at? Because this was one of the big things, the last meeting that we had about addressing, and what the future capacity will be after full development of the property, and how you guys are working with Redstone Water and Sand to mitigate the situation or future build out, because I can see, you know, in the plan, they talk about hitting sort of an 80% benchmark GPM and a 95% benchmark, and those different benchmarks trigger different activities. Does that sound about correct?
Yeah, so maybe to back up, the plant has a 50,000 gallon capacity.
Yep.
80% capacity of that triggers needing to go to design of a future plant. So you need to be in with the state, going through the design process. As you keep developing, if you hit the 95%, that's the trigger that you have to be starting construction. So right now, their peak in the summer's like 34,000 gallons per day. And that's what the plant is based on, actual flows. So we're working, so in the past, the district is aware, you know, the boulevard will have water 1 foot underneath the road surface, even in some spots coming over the top. So they're in groundwater, you know, for months during the spring runoff, summer season. So we're working with them. In the past, they've taken care of several manholes that they knew were leaking. So basically, old style pipe didn't have a rubber boot around at the base. It just had grout. That grout over time can fail. We've identified working with the district, 4 more manholes, 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly, but 4 or 5 more manholes that, have some infiltration issues that they were planning to tackle in the coming years. So we're working with the board and staff right now to see if Stefan can help fund, you know, if we get to some kind of agreement, can help fund some of that work up front. Our hope is that we could actually do that this late winter, early spring, so we can get ahead of spring runoff and we can actually monitor the groundwater through this summer and see what our impact has done. If our impact, basically, we're trying to reduce anywhere between 5 and 10 gallons per minute, which will drop the capacity and allow the castle to tie on with no further implications. But, you know, we don't have final data until we actually do the work.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Let me see, do we have any, we're going to see if there's public comment, I guess.
Yes, we do have one person online, that is Pete. Pete, if you would like to raise your hand, if you have any comments for the board. That's *6. And Pete, if you will unmute.
Chief Valentine in the room also, I think, wanted any public comment.
Pete, do you have any comments for the board?
Chief Valentine, do you want to make a comment right now? Well,
Sure would, yeah, that's okay.
yeah, please.
Can you hear me okay up there?
Yep.
First of all, I can't speak of anything about the quality of the project or the integrity of the project. What I can speak to very well is the quality and integrity of the individual who's coming up here today to ask for whatever you guys are doing. I didn't read through the packet. I don't even know what's going on there exactly, but I've known Stefan for quite a while, and he's been a friend of our fire department for quite a while. In fact, he didn't know I was coming tonight, but I just want to speak up on his behalf to say, at any given time for the fire department, he's been a friend of ours. He's helped us on some projects. He did the same already for Carbondale Fire. I connected Stefan with Carbondale Fire and Pickett County Communications. They've already helped to fund a wildfire camera site up on Elephant, which he's sponsored, which is already underway, which is going to really help immensely with the integrity of our fire cameras up here, the ones already in Glenwood Springs area, to connect all these cameras together. So he asked what he can do to kind of help, you know, make wildfire safer down there. And that's a big step that he's done, his company's done to really speak to that. So I just wanted to come here and let you guys, because he certainly didn't mention that. It wasn't mentioned in the report anywhere that he's helped with this. One other thing that's happened this last summer, we were like to do some firefighter training. He opened up his grounds to Pickett County and other fire departments in the valley to come up there and to do some training up there, which was a really big help for us at kind of last minute. So I just came to thank him for that and let you know that I believe the integrity he's shown thus far, at least through our department, and he's already starting to show to Redstone, the fire department down there has been phenomenal.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So Pete, will give you one more moment to unmute. That's *6.
All right, well, I guess I'm gonna close public comment and I would entertain a motion.
Actually, staff
I
comment.
have-
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanna just make sure I understand what changes, you made to
So and I'll go through the changes. The ones we should discuss before I make a motion would be really the open space ones.
Well,
Everything else is pretty definitive.
I do have one question for them. Two questions actually. So we talked about, bye Rick. Nice to see you. We talked about, a reduction in the number of attendees at the tour to 10. Right now, the language is 50. 24 tours a year, 50 attendees, which, yeah, it's a lot. But we also talked about the fact that if we're dropping the number of attendees to 10, and you have 24 tours a year, that's only 240 people who could get in on a tour. And so the question I posed to Glenn yesterday, I think it was, is would there be some consideration on increasing the number of tours?
Well, I understand the concern. The reality is that there's never been a tour of 50 people, right? So, first of all, that would require amplification from the guide. They're gonna need to have.
Stefan, I'm not questioning reducing the number of people. I
Right.
understand that. That's
Right.
not what I'm questioning. I'm just questioning maybe increasing the number of tours that are available on an annual basis.
So if we're gonna drop it from 50 to 10, even though
50
50 is obviously an unreasonable number, you maybe are asking to increase the volume or the
The
amount of
volume,
days
the
per
number
year
of days a
that there are
year.
tours due to the fact that we've dropped it to 10 people.
Yes,
But the current reality is a tour can be up to 50. That was an allowance to the owner of the property to choose how they're gonna run the tour, right?
Mhm.
At the end of the day, there's never been a tour of 50 offered.
Right.
So it was not an obligation to offer 50 slots per tour. It was an allowance to ownership to say you could have up to 50 people at the same time.
Mhm.
So I believe 24 tours is a good number. Now, if you want to go from 24 to 28, I can accommodate, but you also need to understand our perspective, right? We do have a economic activity there that conflicts with becoming an open museum, right? So I think we compromise already and try to accommodate and keep public access to it. If you have a number to propose and it's in the vicinity of 20, 30, I can live with it, but if it becomes the math that say, okay, so if it was 50 times 24, that's 1,200, so that's gonna be 120 tours, that I cannot do.
Right.
So I have some degree of flexibility, but it has to fit the reality of the economic activity.
Okay, so, it's to the B and Z, but I would then, in, condition number 20, which is our annual review and those items that, we're gonna look at in the annual review, 20C, one of those is status of the public tour and the public tour schedule. And I would add to that, and number of reservations and how many were at capacity. So we can maybe monitor that and see, like if people are in Redstone getting shut out of tours because it's only 10 people and the season's over, and we hear about that, and that's just data that we get or complaints that we get, then the annual review process would be the opportunity to have that conversation again.
Correct, but I can already tell you, if you open that door, you're gonna have people that they already come to me and say, I believe the tour should be for free. And I believe there should be every weekend 5 tours for free. I just want to understand what is this open suggestion from conflicting interest. Obviously, a tourist would want to tour the castle and not having to pay for it, right? And he would want to have unlimited access to that privilege. I just want to understand what the review process can impose on me, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna put a significant amount of money to run a primary operation. And I just want to make sure that the general public comment is not gonna disturb the main activity, which is to operate a lodging retreat.
Well, I don't mind if I mean, one of the things that we asked for last time was a deeper dive into the tours and what they look like, for how you would accommodate that and what that looks like. The only thing that I've gotten is 24 at 50 attendees. That's all I've had so far from you guys. So if you want to take a shot at creating a better explanation of what the tours are they free? Are they not free? How much? We
can do that.
And I think we submit that yearly report to the Board of Commissioners already. So I can easily
Sure.
provide you with
let's build off of that
that's right.
and see what.
That's right.
Sorry, so you're fully up and running. You don't have parking for 50 attendees.
No, there were shuttle provisions that were required in the currently approved master plan. But I think, I don't know, to tell you the truth, I was there, but I don't know where the 50 number came from. I think it was something that the Carvers proposed, but it's not practical. So I think we should do what Leslie's suggesting is between now and the Board of County Commissioners, flesh out the tours a little more, give you the background on what's been happening in the past and a proposal for how we will accommodate them in the future. Sure, we'll do that.
Yeah, let's,
Prior to the board.
Are we updating 17 tonight? We're leaving it at 50 for the resident.
well,
It's
Glenn's suggestion is to drop it to 10. So that's,
For this evening.
well, that's his recommendation on how to change the resident. I don't have.
but it's up to 50,
Yeah.
right?
Up to 50, right.
So I guess the question for Glenn and for Leslie is, are we okay? Sorry.
Oh, God.
Are we okay leaving it for this evening, or are you looking for a reduction this evening for up to 10?
Well, I think what we should do.
Because I have the note for 20C to update that in terms of the review. So
Yeah.
status of public tours and the public tour schedule and number of reservations. How many tours at capacity was the language I think we had.
And what I would suggest is that we tweak number 17 in that, prior to, consideration by the board of the amended master plan, that we, provide, background regarding the history of what the tours have been over the past few years and, a proposal for how they'll continue in the future. So we'll give some background information to Leslie and the board so that they can consider the whole schedule for tours and the capacity and the number of tours.
Can we leave, for this evening, for the resolution, can we leave it at 24 and strike the second sentence? And just leave out the capacity? Because there's no debate about the number right now, unless you come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna
So
be,
just strike the second sentence in 17 this evening,
yeah,
and nothing's changed.
And then add the language that Glenn
And
recommended.
then, and
Yeah.
add Glenn's, amend the master plan, look at the history and how it should continue. And then for 20C, the status of public tours and public tour schedule, and number of reservations, and how many of the tours are at capacity. So that covers us for this evening. We can move forward and you can discuss it.
Sure.
Because you're gonna have this conversation again in a couple of weeks, sorry.
Not a problem.
Well, and my recommendation, and I'm not sure how the tours have worked in the past, but if the tours were like every other Thursday, show up at 3 PM and there's the tour, and you guys have no idea how many people are gonna show up, if any people are gonna show up. my recommendation would be, and there's other historical properties like this all over. I forgot the name of the mansion in Denver. And there's, you know, people living there, is that you create some online reservation
That's
system.
what we do.
Yeah, and streamline it, and then you can create a format where you can get as many people as possible to see the property with the least amount of impact on your guests, and sort of make that function so that there's not a lot of, you know, you're not affecting your guest experience. Yeah.
That's the way we've been running. There is an online booking. People buy their slots.
Yeah.
We also let them know that if it's less than 4 people, the two will combine 2 tours together. And we've been losing money running those two, but we do it as a public service for the community.
We'll do that. We'll spell it all out in a letter to Leslie for consideration by the board.
Zach, we do have a member of the public who has raised.
So, yeah, we're gonna reopen public comment.
So Mr. McCormick, if you could unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep,
Okay,
go ahead.
yeah, thank you, and thank you to Glenn and Stefan and Leslie for doing a good job on this presentation. As a neighbor up here, and I think I can say for the other neighbors, our biggest issue is, of course, the road. And there were some changes to the road in the last during the last ownership that as far as the drainage, and part of it's not working that great. Most of it is, but there's some that's not. Stefan's been a really great neighbor, and we want to work with him, and I think that's going to be something that he and I can figure out between now and the BOCC, and also maybe having Yancey or Colby come up and take a look at the concerns. But there's a section of the road that there is actively erosion happening towards the river, and and it needs to be looked at, and it's to everybody's best interest that we deal with this. So I would just say that that's something that I would like to, you know, put on just to make sure everybody's aware of, and hopefully that we can get together and try to figure out with the engineers and stuff what the best way forward is.
Great, thank you, Mr. McCormick, for your comment.
So the condition of approval that we have in here is number 7, a road maintenance plan and agreement. The maintenance of Redstone Castle Drive shall be recorded as an exhibit to the BOCC resolution. So we want to get those things nailed down. My question to Rye is that, Glenn has asked, strike the word agreement, basically, and then it's a road maintenance plan that Stefan is agreeing to adhere to. Should that be an agreement between the county and the property owner? Or we just want a road maintenance plan?
We can do it that way. The other way to do it is to include the conditions in the proposed BOCC action that will memorialize how the applicant will maintain the road in order to keep their approval alive. So if that's maintain a 12-foot driving surface with appropriately spaced pullouts, utilizing a recommendation from whomever it is, fire department or road engineer or Sopris Engineering and Colby's group. That's an appropriate condition of approval. And that in of itself, to some extent, is an agreement between the applicant and Pitkin County when it's included as a condition of approval. So I don't think there's a need for a separate agreement between Pitkin County and the applicant. If that works for this group, I think that's probably the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
So let's just strike agreement, because we still want to see that plan.
Sure, the condition of the road is the condition of approval regarding the condition of the road is incumbent on the applicant to maintain in a state that is inherently related to the safety for evacuation purposes and fire purposes, and just everyday use of the road, given the proposed uses they have. So it's appropriate to include it as a condition of approval.
Okay.
The other way you could do it is, if you remember, we're gonna document the approval in the amended Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan.
Mhm.
So the road maintenance plan and the plan for the road can be a component of the master plan.
That's just fine too.
Yeah, where it says that this is the plan for how the road's gonna be maintained. You know, we put the plan profile in there, and then we go have, you know, a series of bullets for what the ongoing maintenance plan will be for the road. Either way is fine, but you know, it is unusual that we're actually gonna have a plan that's the product of this process.
Okay,
But it does make sense to have a plan, given the substandard size of the road, so.
right.
And I could see like the plan profile of places where the pullouts are gonna be, the annual maintenance that's gonna occur. We'll just make that a section of the master plan.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
So then I'll change the language on 7. I would propose saying a road maintenance plan for maintenance of Redstone Castle Drive shall be developed and included in the First Amendment of the Village Lodge
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Master Plan. Okay.
Okay,
Those are all the questions I have. for
now I'm gonna close public comment and I will entertain a motion.
Then
If anyone else is.
I have to make a motion and then go through all the recital. The only one I wanted to make sure that we captured was, again, the open space.
Oh, yeah.
That seemed, there was a he said, she said still.
Mhm.
And it seemed, we can move forward this evening. It's gonna come back up at the OCC. But I heard yes to everything on Ice Pillar, and I heard no to the north-south. And I heard no to below 7,400.
Yeah, as far as the ice pillar trail goes, that's amenable, that there should be a plan for registration, a condition about that. And I think what the condition should say is the applicant will work together with the county staff to come up with a plan for access to the ice pillar. And we'll do that before we go to the Board of County Commissioners.
And so that's captured on page 11 of the resolution currently.
Yeah, that would be, 5, no.
6B.
6B. Six B, where I talk about, it's under the maintenance.
Access only fence for pedestrians.
Yes,
Okay.
that's where we would add that one.
And then there were 3 easement requests total.
Yes,
The ice climbing, what are we calling the second one, the north-south trail?
so if you look on number 8, we have the conservation easement,
Which is the check mark,
right,
right?
that's a question.
There's a check mark.
What
Sorry, it was a yes.
Yeah.
Conservation easement, including land between of it to no,
Right,
as per this evening.
well, I would,
This is,
Paul, can you pull up your map? Is it the connection of the 7,400 to the historic, or is it the chunk on the south side of the castle?
Well, I think it's both. We need to take a look at the land it would be to the east of the historic preservation easement and the 7,400 line, and see if there's anything that could that have some possible use. I don't know. I've never looked at that land, but we can look at that between now and the board to see whether there is anything there that could potentially be used and whether it's possible to conserve it or not. But we just haven't studied it. I don't know what's there.
I know that in the previous approval, the south part was part of the approved activity envelope,
Yeah.
right? And the logic for the 7,400 was purely to protect the calving of the elks. Now, I understand the request is let's make it as big as possible, but the spirit of giving away all that was really for wildlife preservation. I do not believe, and maybe Jonathan can talk about it, that there was any wildlife activity in the south part. So, Jonathan, maybe you can talk about it.
Yeah, in the old loop where the cottages were supposed to be, Jonathan, I think that was called Alma's Loop.
That's right,
Yeah.
Alma's Loop.
Where it loops around on the south end of the castle in terms of the value of that land for wildlife, because it would certainly be valuable from our viewpoint to have that land available for some use in the future. We don't know what.
And maybe not for me, maybe for God knows what's happening one day, right? So
For eight B, if we can leave that open to satisfy both Paul and Jonathan, and eight B would be changed to study and look at the land for potential use or conservation, and not conclude that this evening.
I'm fine with that. That, if there is development potential here, then we can talk about that. I just assume that with the castle on this parcel, there's not much left to do. And we can accommodate access easements and roads and that kind of thing. But again, my job is to advocate for as much conservation as possible. So that's what I'm doing.
So, but Paul, it open as a study rather than, again, I'm kicking the can down the road, but rather than a no out of this meeting, so it wasn't, P and Z didn't accept OST's recommendation, but P and Z punted a little bit and keep the conversation.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And I'll just pipe in that area down at the south end of the property has been identified by CPW staff going back to Kevin Wright and including John Groves and evidence that I've seen over the years as a movement corridor. And I wasn't thrilled about the idea of the cabins in the last proposal. So inclusion in that and a conservation easement would definitely protect some wildlife resources.
So, but everyone leaves this meeting knowing that we kept the conversation open and.
To tell you the truth, I read this resolution and I missed 8C because there was no referral, 8B, because there was no referral memo from
OST.
There was in the December 5th.
Yeah, I just
The
need to, we
referral
just need
comment
to
was
study
in
that.
there.
So,
Well, sure.
Yeah.
So let's study, but yeah.
And the chair's about to ask that everyone's okay staying past 7 and in order to, right?
Yeah, I'm just about to do that.
Figured we were on the cusp.
Cusp, I think.
So I think we've hit each of the, so there's the note, I'm just gonna call it the north, so the north-south, the ice pillar and the below 7,400. And I think we have language for each of those three and the decision on each of those three for today's resolution.
Is the P and Z deleting D?
Which is the north-south. Yeah, that one is
I'm hearing a no from the client, period, and I'm hearing
It's
yes.
just a-
And I'm hearing yes from Paul.
okay. So we in agreement that there shouldn't be a public access by the river on Lovers Lane on a private property. We will organize community event so that the local community can view the castle. I'm okay with that. But there shouldn't be an open walkway of, it's for safety reason, for privacy. It is just not
Here's what I'll
workable.
say, and I'll ask Paul, sorry. Is that if this was an existing trail that the community of Redstone had been using like over the years that had already been there and the members of the community used it to connect to some other trail that went farther down the river or farther down the Crystal to like a fishing access, and there was like established use, I would be on the other side of it, but to create the trail that it doesn't, that's just, where's it gonna end? Is it just gonna go to the property and then people are gonna walk back around? It doesn't seem a reasonable request.
That-
So, that's-
For consideration.
Understand.
That has been studied years by picking
On the other side.
and they've selected the other side of the river for the
Yes.
Crystal River Trail.
So we as Pitkin would love your offer of events for the Crystal River Valley and for the town of Redstone.
I gotta figure out where to put that in the reso, but I will do that.
In lieu of the recreational trail easement, AKA the north-south trail.
And we're amenable to that and Leslie will find a spot for it.
Cool, thank you for that.
Paul, go ahead.
I just want to be clear, the point of that was to really gain visual access, better visual access to the historic resource there. So if there's another way to do that, that's fine. I think the real open, yeah.
Is there a opportunity on the other side of the highway, like above the coke ovens? Like where there's a spot up there where we could, there's an existing opportunity that looks across the valley to the property? It's just a thought.
Yeah, we can look at that. And, one of our main priorities is getting permanent access to the ice climbing. So I'm really happy we can get there. And I'm okay with, since I have the mic right now, I'm okay with the registration as long as it's commemorated in a way that does not disappear with the next landowner. So as long as we can build in some way to have a registration that also can default to open space to ensure that we have access to ice climbing forever into the future, whether or not this landowner has this property, then that's great.
And on that point, whoever is gonna go to the ice pillar is gonna be subject to the same rules as the property owner, which means no ducks allowed on the trail.
Yeah, I'll work with Rye and with your team to make something that works. But yeah, I no hard feelings on that Lover's Lane trail. We can move on.
Thank you.
Yeah, motion. Motion.
I will.
At this point, I'd like to make a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Pitkin County, Colorado, recommending approval to the Board of County Commissioners for the Artsy Ownership LLC Redstone Castle First Amended Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan, Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan Major Amendment, an amendment to Chapter 11 definitions, Section 63040, exemption for deed restricted dwelling unit, Section 430, use specific standards in Table 4.1 of the 2006 Pitkin County Land Use Code, Title 8 of the Pitkin County Code, options to defray the payment of impact fees for employee housing, activity envelope and site plan review, and special review for a wellness center and greenhouse. And then I'm going to go through each of the pages for the changes, and I'll go in order. Starting where? So starting with page 8. As per the wildfire expert, we will use the Colorado State Forest Service language to reduce structural ignitability. As per the wildfire expert, on number 19, we'll change parcel A and B mapped medium. And so the conditions of approval will reflect medium or severe and not low. I'm now on page 11 of the resolution. The road maintenance plan number 7 is a road maintenance plan for maintenance of Redstone Castle Drive shall be recorded, or sorry, should be included in the amended Village Lodge master plan. And that's number 7. And the attorney's concern is that we maintain that 12-foot wide road surface as well as turnouts, and that would be included in the road maintenance master plan, which again becomes a section or component of the master plan. Now we're looking at conservation easements on the same page. We're striking B. That was a no. C is a
No, B is staff and the applicant shall study.
Oh, sorry. I
The
have,
expansion.
sorry, B is not stricken. B is study, look at the land for potential use or conservation of that land between 7,400 feet elevation and the historic easement on parcel A and B for review by the Pitkin County Open Space and Trail staff and board and the client and applicant. So then we're on to 8C. And the only addition there is a registration that would exist in perpetuity and it would default to open space. But basically, how do we gain access to the ice pillar? The north-south, which is D, has been stricken. However, the applicant has offered community events that would be to the benefit of the Crystal River Valley and Redstone in lieu of the north-south trail as proposed by Open Space and Trails. And that would replace letter D or go somewhere else in the memo. I'm now on page 12. 9C, the only addition was we do have engineering of all bridges and our culvert crossings, and we would recommend, this board, planning and zoning would recommend that it would be reviewed by Carbondale Rural Fire, and Chief Carl Oliver has already chimed in saying he would look to review that, so to work with you. Again, not an additional constraint. I'm now on page 13. We struck the second sentence, but we left the number 24 public tours in. We did include, the applicant will look at the history and the number of people that have generally attended the tours, so we can have basically a more informed debate over the max, or the up to, if you will.
Prior to BOCC.
Prior to BOCC.
19 is all changed for Mark Hamilton's and Wise.
Amended by Mark Hamilton and Rye is number 19 as per 2.4.20C5. We're good on 19?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a question on 20B.
C.
Sorry. Well, there's also a question on 20B, which is around light pollution. And obviously they're gonna have to submit cut sheets for exterior lighting or path lighting we discussed.
Yeah, I'm adding that someplace else.
Cool.
I'll tell you when we get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
With motion sensors.
Oh, no.
It's my 120 for the night.
Glenn's language, I plugged in someplace
And
else.
so 20C, to Leslie's point, the status of public tours and public tour schedule, and number of reservations and how many tours are at capacity. So we sort of covered that twice. Number 21 was we striked, we struck. On page 15 now, we're back into the wildfire in Donovan's world. The applicant shall comply with the following medium wildfire development standards updated. There is also on page 16, the current Colorado State Forest Service recommendations are for 1/8-inch openings, not 1/4 inch. So basically it's a quarter the size, again, for health, safety and protection. We added below at number 7 on page 17, I would say look at screening in decks with 1/8-inch metal mesh. Again, what Roland Broughton is showing is exposed decks. So if you get embers under the deck, you lose your structure. And so really it's a fire protection question, which would be, number 4, screening decks with 1/8-inch metal mesh. And again, if Roland Broughton wants to push back, they should just have a conversation with, Carbondale Rural. The same roof vents on letter D, number 2, should be 1/8-inch max as per Colorado State Colorado State Forest Service. Signature page, anything on this?
Yeah. So,
And we left the definitions unchanged, and we left in drug and alcohol treatment, even though it's not.
mhm. So, 38, condition 38C, where we talk about driveway lighting, uplighting. Bless you. What, I'd like to add the sentence, a specific trail lighting plan shall be proposed for review and approval by staff. How high, maximum shielding, identification of specific location shall be included in the lighting plan.
And intensity.
Okay. Intensity.
Motion sensor.
And then, on, 6B, where we talk about winter access only through the fence. A winter access plan to and through the debris mitigation fence, applicant shall work with staff to develop a winter access plan to and through the debris mitigation fence.
Or the ice pillar specific.
For the estimate, yeah. But that's what that is, that's what that's geared to, but I'll clarify that as well.
That's the only one I had. That
Should probably be to and through or around. Because
That's the only.
it doesn't sound like it's very practical to go through this thing.
Right.
Over.
Over.
Over, under, and through the woods.
They can climb the ice, they can climb the hill.
Actually, put a little ladder
Yeah.
above the fence.
I just wanted to,
Yeah,
I just want to reiterate,
it's probably the best way to do it.
That's a good idea. Stefan, today we should put a ladder up
Yeah.
that goes over the
Yeah.
fence,
Or just a ramp, like the metal ramp on either side.
like for elk, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We can move it.
That's a good idea.
So do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Second?
One minor change to the title to reflect what we talked about, the title of the resolution. And the intent of the change is to make sure that there's a clarification between master plan uses and the allowed uses and the fact that there is no special review for the specific uses on the property, specifically the wellness center and the greenhouse. So in the title of the resolution, the last phrase, and special review for a wellness center and greenhouse should be struck. And in the phrase that starts section 430, use specific standards in table 4-1 of the 2006 Pitkin County Land Use Code, Title 8 of the Pitkin County Code, to add wellness center and greenhouse as master plan uses in the BLP zone district. And then those changes should carry through throughout the rest of the resolution. There are 5 or 6 places I identified those changes. Mark Hamilton also pointed those out, and the idea would be to make sure that everything's consistent throughout the resolution.
so, and as a motion, I accept those as friendly, and it's the same motion. Thank you.
So we have a motion from Jeffrey, second from Doug. Jasmine,
Yes,
yes,
yes.
and I vote yes.
And there wasn't any further comments on the resolution or the amendments first, and then you can vote.
That, well, I was getting to it. Any further comments? Oh, we got to that, no?
I just want, again, I want to reiterate, and I'll shut up, but thank you, Stefan, and thank you for the fantastic team, and then thank you, Leslie, for all the work and, both the memo and the resolution, so thanks. Really, thank you. Really appreciate your time and your effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for their hard work.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks for.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Now you can vote.
All in favor, Jeffrey? Jasmine?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Yes. All right,
Thank you.
I take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We get to do another cycle.
2024.
I think, I'll do it.